Thanks for tuning in to more Formula One as we talk Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix F1 following a very crazy week last week. CJ Radune from RotoWire.com joining us here, and definitely not the boring kind of activity we dealt with over at NASCAR in Bristol. So there was some really entertaining, and yet, even though it was a wire-to-wire win, there were some interesting, kind of issues that took place in the race. It's always a nice, aesthetically pleasing race, to watch on television. Nice to see that. Bahrain, of course. And you hit a couple of your picks. You had Russell as a top four driver at minus 150 and McLaren, the winning car, at minus 250, which at this point is actually looking like, a pretty nice, fair enough number, even though Max could always come and do some damage, as we saw a couple of weeks ago. But what did you think about the race?
I thought it was exactly what we hoped for, and quite the turnaround from what we saw the week prior in Japan. Japan was just, for whatever reason, the narrow track, the medium to high speed corners, a lack of slow corners, just reduced the amount of passing. And I'm not sure any passing happened throughout the field that entire race. Bahrain was very different, as predicted. It has a mixture of slow and medium speed corners. So and it had extra, I think there are 2 or 3 DRS zones, if I'm not mistaken. So extra opportunities for drivers to make passes, which happen. And then just the tire strategy throughout the race, obviously, played its hand throughout. And so you had some comers and goers. It was interesting to see Russell, as you pointed out, with Mercedes. They continue to be the most consistent team in Formula One, except for the fact that they're just, lacking a little bit of pace compared to McLaren. I think that Mercedes and Russell might end up being currently a spoiler. If they can get that extra speed, they might be up there for the season. But the one to watch certainly is going to be the battle between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Norris was the favorite going into Bahrain. At that track in particular, he had been the one that had outperformed Piastri in the past. But for whatever reason, Norris made some mistakes, made some missteps, most notably in qualifying, which hurt his ability to be able to come off the line and immediately challenge his teammate Piastri for the win. And track position and being able to qualify up front in Formula One means a whole heck of a lot. And I think that's exactly what you saw on Sunday, as Piastri was able to dominate the race.
Yeah, and I mean, how unusual is it to have a situation like one of those pre-start penalties? I guess, I don't know why, but I guess a couple of things. When he slipped over the line, first of all, how come he didn't feel that? Or how come someone on the team didn't notice that? Like, I know a lot of things happen fairly quickly, but you would have thought, or is it one of those things where maybe the team recognizes it, but they can't say anything to him because maybe no one will catch it? I don't know.
I think it's probably that. Best to keep your mouth shut rather than incriminate yourself and hope that nobody noticed. The same thing is true in NASCAR and the restart zone, when you see people, slightly going earlier or trying something to be able to get that advantage, that little extra bit of advantage, and it ends up in a penalty. I think that's, it was probably more of a mistake versus Norris trying to actually gain any kind of advantage other than everybody else, trying to go right as soon as the lights go off. But I think we saw it again. It was just one mistake that he made on the grid. But then later in the race, passing, I believe it was Hamilton at the time, he went off track and had all four wheels over the white line and was pulling away from Hamilton, and then was forced to drop back and give the position back. The team actually did call him on that because the penalty of coming into the pits and serving a time penalty would have been worse. But 2 mistakes right there, coupled with a poor starting position from qualifying to begin with, and your race is sunk after that. There's really nothing you can do. So the question for me is really, how many mistakes is Norris going to make and or avoid throughout the rest of the season? How perfect can Piastri be? I think it's shaping up to be a really interesting battle to watch as the season goes on, because as we say often and pretty much every week, the Constructors' Championship is what really matters. And if they start fighting one another to the detriment of the team as a whole, then we're going to have some bigger problems, and that could create some entertainment for us as well.
All right. By the way, George Russell, as I mentioned, he is starting now. We'll get to the updated odds here for this week's event, but he sure is, you would think, becoming a nice top 4 pick, because he's been in the top 4 in 3 of his 4 finishes, finishing second. What was the situation? I was hearing over the radio, the analysts were saying something about some sort of penalty or something. They were sort of like they were. I don't know what did you remember that? Did you pick up on that?
Was it for Russell? I don't recall anything about
it.
Russell.
Sounded like it was regarding Russell. Like if they were also afraid that because he had done something, and again, it might have been the line thing, going over the line,
track limits, yeah,
and that they were but he he shouldn't have done that, but they made it sound like it was inevitable. But it never happened.
Interesting that race, for whatever reason. Obviously, Norris got the penalty, or had to give the position back, I should say, for making the pass because of track limits. He went off the track. So many drivers got warnings and the 3 strikes to get the black and white flag to say no more. If you get any more, then it's time. And that would have been Russell as well. There were at least 5 individuals, drivers, that ended up on their 3rd strike, and so one more would have knocked them out, or earned a penalty, I should say. So that seems to be a characteristic of the Bahrain track, and I'm not sure if everybody was just pushing it, and or if the track was truly slippery, or they were just trying to carry too much speed, one or the other. But track limits at that track certainly reared its head over the weekend, and everybody was cutting it pretty close in terms of collecting a penalty, Russell among them.
So Norris actually was warned then before that.
So he made the pass on Hamilton. His team said, give the position back, otherwise we'll get a penalty. Then throughout the race, as the race went on, he continued dropped wheels off, which ended up getting him the strikes. And then his team said, absolutely no more. This is it. You're on your final strike.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the odds for this week. And who do you think is going to be the favorite?
I would guess, honestly, that Norris and Piastri would be tied at probably -150, maybe -250.
Ooh, whoa. We're getting to the negatives. That's no good. And if somebody was favored over the other, who would it be?
Probably Norris.
Okay.
Oh, we're plus. Look at that. But I bet you they're tied. Very close. Yeah. Interesting.
So this is
Piastri getting play because he's got 2 wins. He's about ready to catch his teammate in the championship. Everybody wanting that intramural rivalry at McLaren, I guess.
So next up, is it Max?
Next one, honestly, it should be George Russell.
Okay. What do you think the odds are?
450. Oh, Max.
Wow.
Really? Wow. I don't know. So the story with Max this week, and compared to last week and compared to Japan the week before, where he had, a very good race with being able to keep everybody behind him, Bahrain was predicted to be a bad track for Red Bull. And I think that proved to be true. Max Verstappen was more like a midfield car. I think Japan probably masked a lot of the problems that they have with the car. And certainly we've heard that from the team as well. And they actually, after Bahrain, they had a team meeting to really, call out in the carpet ways that they can fix it and try to fix things fast. And the leader of Red Bull came out and said it's completely unacceptable where they are. They need to figure things out. I think that the Red Bull car is is as bad as perhaps Liam Lawson and others were making it look, and Max Verstappen is probably slowly, or continuing, I should say, to probably lose his grip on it. So I don't think that at Saudi Arabia, unless he pulls a magical qualifying lap out and somehow gets onto the front row and then is able to lead into turn one, I just don't think that it's going to be his weekend.
Okay, so even though he's won this race, 2 of the last 3, this is a different car. It's a different situation, and we know a lot's changed since those wins. Completely get that, but it's a big number. So you're not looking. So again, what you're saying is just because he won in Japan a few weeks ago, that scenario you're just not seeing happening.
I'm not seeing it happen. I think it's easier to pass, remarkably enough, because I'm not sure people would think this, but I think it's easier to pass on this Saudi Arabia circuit with 27 turns, and the fact that it doesn't even really have a straightaway. I think it's easier to pass on this track because of the 3 DRS zones and the way that drivers can time a move into a turn at either end of the track. Whereas in Japan, there was really only one place that a pass could be made, and nobody actually did it. So
okay.
I think what it takes for Max to win this week is a perfect qualifying lap where he gets on the front row, he leads into turn one, and then quite honestly, he makes his car as wide as possible without getting a penalty for the 50 laps of the race. And I just don't think that that's probable. I think the Red Bull is really showing its age at this point, and they're struggling to keep up. And I think it's worse than probably these odds are even suggesting.
Okay. Interesting. By the way, speaking of Max, forgot to bring up the pit road technical issues that Red Bull had last week, which is really bad. I mean, because again, completely different from NASCAR. So their setup is really like the driver is really seriously just not going to go until that light turns green.
Yep.
Now, who controls the light? Is it supposed to be the team or F1?
It's the team. So the drivers in Formula One don't have good vision. So it's very hard for them to see anything around the car, even on the front wheels. So they need to wait for that to be able to ensure that their pit crew is safe and they're not going to run anyone over. And it's the team's responsibility. There is somebody there that hits the button to change that light. And I don't know if the button malfunctioned or if the person that was pressing the button was just slow, but for whatever reason, the timing was off and he sat there for way too long. NASCAR, you can time it where you hit the jacks, you feel your car drop off the jack and you can go. There are times like that. There are other times where you're waiting to hear your crew chief on the radio say, go, 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 and then you go. Theoretically, Formula One should have that person on the radio telling them as well, which they did. But everybody put all their stock in that light. And whether it was the person pressing the button or the button malfunctioning, either way, it was a very slow stop. And that was one of the things that the team had the meeting about at Bahrain after the race, saying this is just completely unacceptable. We've got to, we're hurting ourselves. We're in a bad enough position as it is. We're hurting ourselves with mistakes, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, what else is the crew chief doing that he can't just take, what is it, a 3-second stop and just take 3 seconds to just, okay, go.
Yeah, I don't know if they don't have the view, because in Formula One, the person that's on the radio is either in the garage or on the pit wall.
You only get one person allowed on the radio?
Yes, the main person that talks to the driver is either inside the garage or on the pit wall. And if the car is coming in, I think you see on TV, they kind of turn around and they watch the stop. But I don't know that they have a full view of all 12 people or however many it is that swarm the car when they come into the stop. So I don't know if they have the view to be able to say confidently, go, 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 and not have somebody be in the way. So it's somebody's specific job to be on that button and letting the driver know. Perhaps they should give them a radio channel when they come into the pits too.
Okay, so Russell is going to get some good odds as well.
Clearly, yeah.
So he is the same odds. And by the way, I know Lando Norris is also better than he's been ever. But let's just keep in mind, Lando Norris has never had a top 5 at this track. So it doesn't have some great memories at this track. Russell's actually got a better average than even Norris does. So Russell's been going really well. Why is he 11-1? What's the reason? You didn't have him. You had him as the third choice. You thought his odds would be in half. So does that mean that this is a really good play?
I think the way that George Russell wins is continuing to be as consistent as he has been, along with the team, and then also have something happen to McLaren, whether it's a strategy issue, some kind of contact. This is a street course, and it's a fast street course, as I said, with 27 turns and no real straightaways. It's really easy to crash here. It's really easy to hit the barrier if you're pushing hard. And if those two McLaren teammates really start going at it, take each other out, maybe just damage their own race per se, George Russell might be in there with a shout. So I think certainly what we've got on the screen here of these top four choices, Russell without a doubt is the best value. If you wanted to go with McLaren, I'd probably take the negative odds of a McLaren car winning versus trying to choose between Piastri and Norris individually.
Yeah, again, this is the tough challenge any of these other drivers are going to have, is that if you beat one of McLaren's drivers, you got to beat the other.
Exactly right.
So that's going to make it very difficult again. But George Russell almost did that last week. He never got close enough from the beginning of the race to the end of the race to get to Piastri.
And that's why the odds are so low. Why there's such a gap, because you'd have to have both McLarens have some sort of trouble. Russell's probably Max Verstappen might be up there with a shout for a podium. I think more realistically, he's going to be fighting likely even behind the Ferraris. So maybe 4th through 6th is probably where Verstappen's going to show up. Russell's going to have his hands full likely with the Ferraris, because the Ferraris are starting to figure things out. Lewis Hamilton's getting more comfortable in the car. He said last week that he knows what he needs to do now to start getting more out of the car. So I think that's going to be more of a challenge for Russell, and he might be closer occupied with those behind him in his rearview mirrors in the form of Ferrari than, being close enough with the McLarens to make things interesting at the very front of the field.
Man, I still can't stop wondering exactly like how much better the sport would be if all the cars were equal, if everything was equal and you left it up to the drivers like NASCAR. I mean, what a difference it would be.
Yeah, Formula One has always been about number one, the driver, but the machinery and the technology that's there. They're supposed to be the most sophisticated, fastest, most technologically advanced cars in the world. So that's why you have what it is. And it's always been a championship where you are responsible for building your own car, designing and building your own car. And that adds an extra element. Whereas if you're buying a car off the shelf like IndyCar, and then you're just choosing which motor you want to put into it, it all comes down to tuning skill, pit stops, obviously, strategy, and then your ability as a driver. Formula One, you've got to go from blueprint designs, drawings, and design all the way from nuts and bolts up to an entire car and have it be competitive. Honestly, given the fact that every one of these cars start from hand drawings at the beginning of the rules package to the time that they actually complete a race and they're as close as they are, I think is remarkable. If you go to the top for Lewis Hamilton, the far right, plus 275, is that for a podium finish or is that for top four? Top four, Lewis Hamilton, 275. I would go for that.
Okay, so top four this week is going to be Hamilton. And again, you're getting 275. Any specific reason?
Yes, last week he showed some progress. They finished in the top 6, both of them, and Hamilton came out of the car afterward. Actually, he got out of Q3 and apologized to the team to say he didn't get enough out of it. And then after the race said he knows how he needs to drive the Ferrari in order to get the most out of it. So I think we'll start seeing Hamilton climb his way forward, and the top 4 should be within his reach if that all plays out true here at Saudi Arabia.
So who's your pick outright, Piastri or Norris?
My outright pick is going to be Piastri.
Okay. And again, he's sitting there at just about even. And
But
then
I would absolutely recommend. So Hamilton at a top 4 there, but then certainly regardless of what the odds are, unless they're like -5, if you're getting -250 or something like that for a McLaren car win, 450. Yeah,
Not like last week.
I would still go with McLaren as the winning car, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not great, obviously, but for all the reasons we talked about before, both of them would have to have problems, and that's likely the only way that they don't win.
I'll give you the opportunity. I'll give you because this is a weird sport with the odds and this stuff. I'll even give you the option whenever you want, either outright or winning car, where you can say, I'm going to pass this week. So would you still, someone out there is used to wagering on stuff. You still think that, yeah, you know what? If you want to put $900 out there to make 200, I think it's worth your while because I feel pretty confident McLaren's winning and I'm not worried about you losing $900.
Well, I don't want anybody to hold me.
Oh, well, we're not advising any of that. That's just generally speaking, of course. Because on this channel, we can have some serious gamblers. So
absolutely.
900 is more like 9,000 to some of these guys. So
yeah, it's still too early for me to choose a clear favorite between Piastri and Norris. I think that the mistakes that we saw from Norris last week are unlikely to repeat themselves in Saudi Arabia, which again, it comes down to very, very fine margins between the two drivers. So I would absolutely go with, still likely, McLaren as the -450. I think that's the wiser bet. However, those of us looking to actually make some money, I do like the 275 on Lewis Hamilton for a top 4.
If you had to, which one do you feel the most confident with? Would it still be McLaren, even though you're getting a much bigger nut?
I would feel much more confident with McLaren, yeah, because I think there's stronger competition, with Russell and Leclerc for Hamilton, whereas with McLaren, they're in a class by themselves. It's really, are they going to beat themselves, and which of the two is going to win?
And what's the difference between what we saw last year with Max starting out so dominant, just like he had for years past, and then how everything changed all of a sudden mid-season?
Changed in Miami.
Okay, so what's the difference between last year and this year on why that can or can't happen again?
What needs to happen? Well, I guess what can't happen is McLaren cannot beat themselves. Red Bull last year lost it at Miami because McLaren brought the upgrades to their car to that race that gave them the maximum, allowed them to get the maximum out of the car that they had already designed. At Miami. And Norris won that race. And that was the first one that he came out and won. And really, Verstappen was leading that one. But Verstappen kind of shot himself in the foot by damaging his under tray of his car. And that gave Norris the ability to win. But Norris and McLaren had brought the upgrades to the car that enabled him to be there to begin with. Now, Red Bull is in the situation that McLaren was in last year. They were behind looking forward. It just flip-flop places at the beginning of this year. So what Red Bull has to do is make the right changes to their car in terms of upgrades. So there is a news report that I saw that at Imola, Red Bull is scheduled to bring a large upgrade to their car, and we'll see if that pays off. If Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda suddenly find speed at Imola, and they find enough speed to catch up with the McLaren, I think we've got a different perspective for the rest of the season, and it might be a much closer fight. But at the same time, you got to remember that McLaren's going to still be upgrading their car as well. So they're going to have upgrades coming at some point in the future too.
Okay.
Just whether or not Red Bull can bring the right ones and bring enough of them to close the gap to McLaren. So look for that at Imola.
So the upgrades, do they only occur when you have the extra week or two off?
Usually, but they're typically scheduled in advance because obviously these teams are designing the pieces. They have to manufacture them themselves and they have to put them through testing and all that kind of stuff. So they try to schedule when they're coming up, and they also try to do them when they're close to home. Generally speaking, at a flyaway race like Miami, where all the teams are based in Europe, nobody's based in Florida, and it's across the ocean, you're probably not going to see too much in the way of upgrades. You might see some small ones, but the big upgrades typically come around the typical European events that are close to the home bases, so that they can shuttle parts back and forth if necessary.
All right. So that's so we'll have to wait at least until Miami at the earliest to find out whether or not there might be some changes. And we would know that immediately regarding practice.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So that's in a couple of weeks. Okay. No show next week. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk more F1. We will be back next week, though, to talk NASCAR as they are in Talladega. And if you're into racing of any kind, you know what that means. So, but we'll be back talking F1 in a couple of weeks. Let us know questions, comments, anything that you would like us to talk about, anything that we haven't already talked about on a weekly basis that you think that we should to up the programming, the production value of the show. We appreciate your thoughts. Let us know what you think about any of the picks. If you have some of your own observations regarding the race, we appreciate that too. F1, as far as DFS, you are going to have a report in a couple of days.
We will have our DFS preview for Saudi Arabia at rotowire.com probably on Thursday, and we will conveniently drop the link for you in the comments section of this video as well.
And again, we're recording on Wednesday, so that means when I say a couple of days, it means pretty much when we're going to be posting this video anyway, either Thursday or Friday, when we get the report from RotoWire, from CJ. So that'll wrap it up. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks when we preview Miami.